Welcome to the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. It is Friday, September 1st. Let's go ahead and take a look at the markets this week. We're also going to be talking about the monthly close for the month of August. Got a lot to cover. Let's go ahead and get started. So the monthly NASDAQ chart. Let's go ahead and get started with the actual monthly close. We do see that price had ended up opening pretty high here, actually at the just below this kind of key level, 16,000, actually making its way all the way back down to this level down here that we'd actually, if we look at the daily chart, we talked about this before, this kind of touch of this liquidity pool, like the area that gapped up to produce this next leg higher, and then got bought all the way up. And what we see on the monthly is this huge wick down, getting bought up, and actually closing above the low of this previous monthly candle. Sorry, not the close of this monthly candle, but the wick, the low of this wick down here. So definitely a bullish monthly candle. Even though it is red, the amount of buying that actually occurred during this candle and printing like this makes this definitely a bullish candle. The key thing there just being closing above these levels here and above this 15,400 fib level. Does look like things want to move higher. Doesn't mean we couldn't see lower, but now we have two closes above this key level here, which is kind of a metric that we like to use to determine whether or not the trend is achieved on a particular time frame. So two closes above that level on the monthly chart is a bullish indicator on the monthly here. For the NASDAQ, the weekly obviously looking like it wants to break out higher as well. This still on the weekly looks like this could potentially be a higher low, and we're just moving back up toward producing a new high, potentially back up to all-time highs. You see very much the same thing on the daily as well, closing above these levels here. Looks much cleaner here on the daily, but you can really kind of dive in and get as surgical as you want on the 4 hour too. We still have achieved another high here. This was kind of the level to hold the last few days this week, right? It was just 15,465. You can see how that level was the level that broke to kind of produce these other legs. Came back down, held that level, couldn't break back up, needed to find support, and held that level again. So it still looks good for higher on the NASDAQ. What do you think about that price? Any other comments? Anything I missed?
I'm excited about the monthly print. We very well could see it come down here and retest these support levels. We really like this wick here and all of this good price action on the monthly. That looks equally nice on the weekly. So I can't say that it's just going to blast off from here, but over the next few months, I do believe that we'll see higher.
Yeah, and I don't think we're making any calls, just that the technicals do look primed to make a higher move. Actually, a lot of times that you see these, we talk about those two closes above. A lot of times when you do get that, you end up seeing lower. And the idea with that is that it works on all time frames. We're not going to necessarily go back and find all those examples, but try to draw your own support and resistance. Look for those two candles above or below on a specific time frame, and then look forward from a particular time that you see that, assuming you're looking back far enough. Look forward from those times and you'll see that ends up working out more often than not. So that's why we value it. Let's go ahead and look at the S&P futures with the monthly candle. Very similar story, right? So we had the last 2 months we've had it close above this kind of level here, which was the low of this wick back from December in 21. So that does look like two closes above. And another similar story where it had gotten bought up after moving farther down. Still looks good for higher, and you can see that on every time frame. Again, like we keep talking about, all the indexes look very similar, just the different levels are slightly different. Very similar belief to the NASDAQ. We could see this coming back down. Again, we like this 4,300 level, 4,200 level. You could see those come down, and those kind of be the fuel as a higher low from the macro trend to actually create that push up to all-time highs. September, generally not the greatest month for stocks. Technically speaking, though, things do look good, so that's kind of think, in the forefront of my mind. I don't know about you, Price, but even if September is a worse month, so to speak, I just see it as scoop. It's going to be a lot of selling into these levels that I think would be prime for buying up. I just see it as an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen it close up above on the higher time frames, so we expect it to hold the support that it's gained now. And just like you said, it's just a buying opportunity. So yeah, it's going to be fun the next couple months watching what happens here.
Yeah, and I think too, like if we're weekly is a good indicator of this. We've seen this hold here, and even though we've talked about that being a bullish indicator, I think that it's still fine if it comes back down to those levels that we just mentioned, and you take some longs there. I think those are actually great levels. But I think that if you see this break, people are going to talk about, oh, this is the start of the things. There's going to be a reckoning, or we're going to see a little crash, or people are going to start talking about recession again. This isn't a breakdown of that is not that bad at all. Again, there's those levels we were talking about, and again, like we've been hammering in, this whole move just happened. So I think you'd have to go pretty far down on this chart, probably below 4,000, to really consider this a bearish change of the macro trend. So anything that gets sold off down to these levels, I'm looking to buy if it does happen. I almost wish that it would happen, but obviously we'd all like to see it just continue going higher forever, but that's not how the markets work. Let's go ahead and take a look at the RTY. Probably one of the more constructive charts, obviously constructive charts, I would say. We don't have our two closes quite above this level, but we can see that this line, if we haven't drawn one here, but if you can imagine this line where these closes are happening, you can see a lot of indication of interest at this level, about 1900 even. We've had a lot of closes on or below that line for quite a while. Very few above. These are making more progress above and closing on a different side of sort of that level. So I think that this still looks good, potentially for higher here. It's certainly an improvement of the look overall, right? If this is a consolidation range, then this is on the other side of the range to the upside. So still looking good. And if we look on the daily here, we can see that this hold was pretty textbook, right? So this level, that was this wick back here from June, that actually had produced, it broke above there. That was the level that was holding, that broke to produce this next move. Comes down, touches that, gets bought up, and moves higher. So this still looks pretty good for higher to me as well. What do you think about that, Price?
I think that's exactly what happened on the daily, is it's using all this as confirmation for this to be the spot to buy up on the retrace. And we'll see here on the higher time frames that this whole bounce here several times on the weekly and the monthly as well, it's not unexpected because of all these wicks here. So we saw a lot of wicks here, and it's going to take testing that to break through it. So it's not the fact that we didn't close on the monthly here isn't that alarming, but we haven't seen that confirmation on the higher time frame just yet. So it looks good. It's still testing, doing proper things, and it did close up here. It just didn't hold it. So we'll see what happens, and we do expect higher before we would break it.
Yeah, I think that's true. And also on the weekly, talking about our two candles kind of rule above a level. Got our two closes up here, but then failed and got a lot of closes down below. The thing that's interesting here is, even though we failed to do that here, up here we have a very large number of closes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 above that level. So we're seeing an increase in the number of closes on the weekly chart, and obviously then, of course, the daily chart as well. Above that level there, which is signaling, even though we're having these retracements, there is more interest at price at these levels. So that's another indication of potentially moving higher. Just saw that while you were going over the chart and wanted to talk about that. Let's go ahead and move on to gold. Another one that that has started moving higher again. You know, we had an interesting week where we had a big move up, and we got to this level, 1975. Can't quite break above that, but keep testing it. You know, it wouldn't be unreasonable to come back down to, I think this is the level here, 1950. You see all these wicks, you know, failing to break out, finally breaking out. Seeing a lot of interest at that level in the past as well. Right here, here, here. I would say that it's pretty reasonable to see gold come down to this level. There could be a range, you know, it could still be this 1942, 1950. This is a level that I'm pretty interested in long in gold for a move back up toward 2000. I still think gold looks good. I mean, we do have this, you know, if this is a lower low, we have this move of constantly making higher highs and higher lows up here, and that would be very much still in line with that idea if we moved back down to 1950 as a low. So right now I personally still think gold looks great on the daily. The monthly, you know, we're just having more and more closes above these kind of key levels of, you know, monthly closes in the past. So it's doing the right thing on the monthly chart, on the weekly chart, and on the daily chart. So I see nothing but higher for gold in the long term. What do you think?
I feel the same way about 1950 to 1940-ish there. You know, a $10 range with all of this support is a pretty good option as far as I can see it. So that would kind of be, you know, I don't want to say last chance before takeoff, but like that certainly looks pretty good for a hold to me.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and look at the Dow. Yeah, I mean, again, kind of more of the same. We see these holds here. This is the daily, yeah. So we see these holds breaking back above this level again after making a low. So we're just getting more and more closes above these key levels after breaking down. All this is just trying to find support. Again, another interesting area where it makes total sense for price to move back to for support. So you have all these touches back here, touches back here, touches back here on the other side as support. Even though they broke down, you can tell there's still a lot of interest at these levels because of how often it's getting bought up or sold off at that level. And so when we come back here after making a new high, it makes total sense why that would be the level of interest and the key level to hold, which it did when we retrace back to those levels. And now I just see this moving higher again, potentially towards all-time highs. Interesting about the Dow too is we're actually the least farthest away from all-time highs of any index here, like in terms of numbers. We're really not that far off at all. So I could easily see this moving up very quickly. Monthly, again, 2 closes above key levels here. So still looking bullish. Not really too much to go over unless you have anything I missed. Price?
Nope, it came down to the start of this daily trend right here, and we're seeing it hold so far and continue back up. So it's you know, pretty picture perfect as far as I can tell on the daily. So it's doing all the right things. And we can see how there will be some resistance here on the daily. So it's pretty big. So we will see some resistance on the daily, but we do.
Yeah, I think you could argue that we've seen a little bit of that on that last candle there. You know, obviously, like we talk about, we draw our levels, but it's a range. You can see all those wicks down into that area, and then we had the one from Thursday, where, you know, it wicked up into there and then sold off. But that's all. It's all part of the process, right? I don't know what's going on there. But let's go ahead and no worries. Let's go ahead and move on to oil, which is a lot more textbook. I think we were both calling for when this was going to break out and move higher, and I think we've started to see that very clearly. You know, on the monthly, we have, you know, this is the most clean bullish indication that we've seen. You know, 2 green closes above this level at $80. So we've identified that on another time frame as being an important level, a weekly time frame here. Finally got a ton of closes above there and sold back down into what was a level of interest here if this was going to hold and move higher. In like a textbook higher high, lower low scenario was this $77, $78. You know, we've seen a lot of intra-move touches in that level, so we can see that that's an important level, at least to pay attention to, and that's sure enough kind of got bought up every time it moved in there, and now we have this big kind of power move up towards almost 86 now after hours. The next level is 93, 94, something like that. So oil looks really good for higher. The monthly, just pure green for the last 3 months. Love to see what happens here in the month of September. I could see this just rocketing to 93.5 pretty quickly, and then hanging out there for a little while in this kind of new upper range between 93 and $80, somewhere in there. What do you think of that?
More of the same. That it is on. Let's see here on the daily. Actually, this little move and hold on the weekly here is very encouraging for that monthly chart. I expect it to come up and test at least 90 the coming month.
Yeah.
And it could retrace back down to 80, but I would expect that to be either a wick or only one close, and then it's back on its way. So, yeah.
It looks really strong, and back from around here before this big move. Price is now above all of these wicks, which that's just like a small thing, but if that was a level of interest where there was resistance there, having it's going to close this week above there, that's another bullish indicator. I mean, there are other more important levels to look at, I suppose, but just seeing that is encouraging for the same reasons that you stated.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and look at the Dixie, the US dollar index. I think we talked a little bit about this one before we started. I still think that you have a better understanding of the dollar. Why don't you talk about this one, and I'll add anything when you're finished.
Okay, well, monthly here. So like we talked about, it was a shoot. Sorry, the word's escaping me.
Oh yeah.
The consolidation. Sorry, excuse me. I've got a baby in my arms right now.
All good.
So what we saw was consolidation. We've been seeing that for a long time, and I think this wick is our signal for higher. I think it was a liquidity hunt, and because this looked like a surefire play to hold, and so there were a lot of stops there, and so that's why it didn't hold, because price needs to go lower in order to go higher if it doesn't have the ability to achieve. So if it had made it up higher, then maybe it would have held, but since it didn't achieve, it didn't hold, and the only way to go up is to go down first. And so that's what we've seen, and that's why we're looking at this level here at 103.5 ish.
Yeah, 103.6 ish.
And that's why we're seeing this get achieved, and why we expect this to hold when it comes back down and go higher.
Yeah, just my personal thoughts. Obviously, I'd been pretty vocal about thinking that was going to be the key level that needed to hold as resistance to produce the next leg down. I think I talked about that last week or the week before. Probably talked about it both times, but either way, we've seen a ton of interest and volatility at that level, and it makes sense, right? Because that's the level that everyone sees and everyone's looking at. So there's a ton of liquidity and activity in that area. It was a little bit confusing if we go on the 4-hour, right? We see, this looked like a textbook higher high, and then we got this looked like a potential rejection. And for the trend to change, it needed to lose 103 and 102.8. And we see it coming right down to 103, even a little bit below 102.9, I think was the low, something like that, 9.5. And like you were saying, I think this is just hunting all that liquidity, pulling those stops, and then once it gets it, it's rocketing back into the trend that it looked like it was wanted to lose, actually. But because of this, and this is why we care about these things, these monthly candles, this is, I think you're totally right, this is a confirmation. Like, hey, look at all this liquidity getting scooped up, how far down we went, and still ended up closing higher. And now just looking at that candle myself, you know, in addition to that being like a huge thin wick, we've actually seen that candle close above some of the lows of some of the previous monthly candles. That actually is a big deal to me. I think that's another confirmation for that same idea that this was, you know, scooping liquidity for a move higher. And I think we've talked about in the past that we think that if this does play out in the way that we're talking about for a big move higher, it's probably going to see 109 at some point. You know, I'm not going to sit here and call out how quickly or when that's going to happen, but that certainly looks like a trend shift from downward to upward move here. I think the key idea will be, you know, when we get to this level, which was the high of the previous, you know, leg higher that produced the next move down, you know, are we going to just blast through this or come back down? I believe that if this, you know, this would be a pretty obvious level to hold and then come back down for, you know, another liquidity grab or support area, which, you know, if this was a key resistance area, 103.6, now we're going to look to that as support. So that makes, you know, total sense why something like that could happen in the future. I would say that if I do see that happening, I'll probably be longing this in some form, some instrument or another, because I do believe now that we're going to see higher on the dollar. Anyway, a lot of rambling. Those are my thoughts. What do you think? I mean, I know you just gave us your idea, but did I say anything you agree or disagree with?
No, I see the same level at 103.5 holding. And what I wanted to talk about real quickly is how, and it's easier to see on the monthly, you can't ignore wicks, because when you're trading, you know, that's your stop loss, right? But when you're looking at charts and doing TA, what matters most is absolutely the closes of the candles. Wicks are still important, but people are like, well, what about this lower low? Doesn't that blow up your idea? And no, because it held. That's my long story short.
Yeah, I think that it's important to take in the context of the time frame that you're trading, because if we look at the daily, well, it doesn't look like a big long wick. It just looks like, well, this is clearly a lower low, and that's true, it is. But then we have instances of, you know, on the monthly, this tiny, you know, this wick producing this, you know, this close, and then we see this big counter move. So to say that this blew up your idea is, I just don't agree with that concept, because, you know, now that move produced what is causing, literally that move is producing a trend change. So like, this is still an upward leg, even though it's from a lower low. This is, you know, it's resulted in a move that is potentially going to shift the entire macro trend of the chart, right? So it's you can't just use wicks. You have to look at the closes.
Right. And the other thing is, you see all this, there hasn't been a higher high in a while, right?
Right.
When was the last higher high?
Before this one?
Yeah,
it's been a long time.
Full downtrend, and we're seeing it right here. So, food for thought.
Yeah. No, it's I think this thing is gonna blast off at some point. Anyway, let's go ahead and enough about the dollar. Let's go ahead and look at the banks. Kind of a big week for the banks. You know, we've had, it looked a little spookier last week, and we kind of talked about our ideas that, you know, this level here, 42.50 or 43, really needed to hold, or it started to look real spooky. Talked about if you had a trade idea, kind of where we took it last, that your last stop would kind of be the low of these wicks here, and that has held, and now we're looking we've actually gapped up just today specifically, and produced a move that closed above this key, like, support and resistance level. So it still looks like this is just going to be another version of a higher low, right? If these were all higher lows, then this is just a continuation of that trend, and we want to see this break above really obviously the high of the last move up, so above 50 for a confirmation toward 56.50. There's been a lot of news recently about banks. I think it's all noise. Just trade the chart. This looks great. I think we're going to 56.5. That's my thoughts.
I agree. The trade idea is still valid. We're, I think it's gonna make it. After 56, I don't know, but
who knows?
I think it's at least gonna try and test that.
We're not there yet. I'm not gonna do that TA yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
Because there's a whole lot of information in here that we want before we do that. Anyway.
Yeah, we want to see the structure of the moves, the trend, because we could get up there, and it would be very reasonable to see it break down and try to find support before breaking above that level. So we're going to want to look for a potential trend reversal of a lower low and a lower high before we kind of determine where things might be likely to move. So still, it's not something to be unhappy with. I mean, it's at 45, stops at 42, let's call it, even though it's, that's even right where it is, which I think where we had the trade idea is the best entry. Still a good trade, risk-reward ratio. I see no reason why it won't play out for now, but we'll have to see what happens in the future. Just for fun, let's go ahead and look at the monthly, right? Maybe not the most exciting. It doesn't look like it. It just looks like something where we had one close the month before above that level, and now we close below. So there's no confirmation yet. Just looks like we need to see more in the future. We closed kind of above this level of interest here, which we've been doing for a while. So we just need to see more on the monthly, but on the daily and the weekly here, it looks really good. So just have to see what happens in the future. But for now, we'll stop rambling. Thanks again for tuning into the Trader Hub weekly market review. If you do like this kind of content, sub to the hub and consider joining our Trader Hub Discord community server. You can find it using our link in the description. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Bye.